Get the army on the streets. Well, that's what you'd like to see.
I wouldn't hesitate. Nothing else has worked. You know, why shouldn't we? Why are we so afraid of using the military?
What can Donald Trump teach the UK government about illegal immigration?
Right. So he had a little bit to say about that, Donald Trump, in the press conference this afternoon. He said Keir Starmer could call out the military to help. He says it doesn't matter what means you use. Do you agree with that, Douglas?
Well, Donald Trump's responsible for the southern border, and of course we've got a responsibility as the British government to keep our borders secure. We've inherited some very challenging circumstances, but my sense is when the question is asked, can the military engage in keeping our border safe? What underlies that is how do we professionalise the border? And we've just established the Border Security Command, we've given them counter-terrorism powers. The Navy is actually working with the Border Command already. And in that sense, there is much more that needs to be done. At the press conference today, Keir Starmer acknowledged that at about 6:15 this morning, the first flight took off, returning a failed asylum seeker and someone who had no right to be here to France. That is just the beginning. There is a lot more to do.
And of course, Douglas, as you can see, there was one on Tuesday who didn't take off on a flight.
Yes, and the response of the government's been pretty robust on that in saying, A, we will challenge any court ruling that allows people who have no right to be in the United Kingdom to stay in the United Kingdom. And in that sense, what we've seen this morning is the start of a process, but it's a process that I think many people will welcome.
James Cleverly.
I think the reality is, Liam, that the government have now realised that border control is not easy. I was Home Secretary and I lost count of the number of times Labour politicians said, oh, it's really easy, you just need to ... When we were voting, when we were putting through legislation to try and toughen up our border control, that legislation was opposed by the Labour Party. I was criticised by the Labour Party. And one of the first acts in government that the Labour Party did was to tear up a bilateral treaty with Rwanda that would have helped, it wouldn't have been the sole solution, but would have helped in that deterrent message. And what they have now discovered is that all that hyperbole, all those words, and their initial tearing up of the work that we've done has led to the worst year on record for illegal flight. Does not solve this problem. It's not easy. It was never easy. I never pretended it was easy. I think Yvette Cooper and now the new Home Secretary are realising just how difficult it is. And had they supported the Conservative government when we were trying to get a grip of this, we might be in a better situation now.
James, let me reply quickly. You spent £700 million on the Rwanda scheme. During the Rwanda scheme being in place, 84,000 people crossed the channel, and for £700 million, your government managed to send back 4 volunteers to Rwanda. So that is a lesson to be learned as to how not to do it, rather than how to do it, respectfully.
Danny, that would be more... Sorry, that would be a more stinging criticism.
But it's true.
Were it not for the fact that your government is presiding over the worst year on record.
Let me hear a bit from our audience. Now, let's remember, because the question is, what lessons can Trump teach the UK government? Let's the man in the black shirt and tie. Yes.
Good evening, panellists. Basically, I think this whole subject in regards to immigration, we've got to look at legal migration, which is the fundamental problem in the UK. I say last year 936,000 people came legally, 96,000 people came illegally. So if we sort out legal migration and sort out public services, then I think the public would have a less problem with illegal migration. I think the fundamental problem within our country is public services are not working, they're dead.
Okay. Man in the white shirt.
The question was, what can we learn from the US in terms of immigration? And Trump has unblocked a lot of local frustration around regulation, around being able to handle immigration in the US. Given what we've seen this week in the UK, shouldn't the UK be focusing on what are the regulatory and legal blocks that need to be removed in the UK to enable us to have better control of our borders.
So when the officials from the State Department are going in and taking people out of factories, occasionally taking people off the streets, and this is all contributing to illegal immigration dropping dramatically, is that something you think we could emulate here? Is that something you'd like to see?
I think you have to look at what are the things that prevents the country from really, at all levels, from actually getting a grip on this problem. I think it's a complex issue, but I think we can learn from how the US has actually approached with new policies.
Piers, what can we learn? Or what do you think we should learn?
Well, I don't think we can learn much from Her Majesty's government or Her Majesty's opposition, both of whom were just squabbling like a pair of rats in a sack, but have proved over the last few years that neither of them have a clue what to do about this problem. Keir Starmer was going to smash the gangs. He kept saying it when he was campaigning to be Prime Minister. The only thing he smashed is new records of people coming in illegally over the border. So forgive me if I don't take either of these two gentlemen very seriously as they squabble about who was worst. The truth is a stain on all their houses. What can we learn from Donald Trump? A lot. He's actually achieved, you can hate Trump all you like, but you cannot deny what he's done on the southern border in America is a spectacular success. Under Joe Biden, they estimate up to 10 million, they don't know the exact number, but they estimate up to 10 million people in 4 years went over that southern border illegally into the United States. And under Trump, he's pretty well stopped it stone dead. Now, there are aspects of his immigration policy that I think have gone too far, that I wouldn't like to see replicated here. I think in America, most Americans think the southern border stuff's been great. Most Americans think if you are undocumented and you get into America and you commit a crime, you should be deported. But most Americans, 2/3 in the polls I've seen, do not like the imagery of ICE agents in America dashing into a Home Depot and grabbing undocumented people. So I think they've taken that too far, and I wouldn't like to see that here. But would I like to see Trump policies, in other words, zero tolerance, involving National Guard, involving military, involving...
So get the army on the streets, well, that's what you'd like to see?
I wouldn't hesitate. Nothing else has worked. Why shouldn't we? Why are we so afraid of using the military? It's clearly worked in America, and what have they done? They've reduced it stone dead. So I think there are lots of lessons, but I wouldn't like our country to become a non-compassionate country. I still want genuine asylum seekers to be able to come here and to escape horrific oppression and war zones and so on, and be treated kindly and with compassion. The problem at the moment is there are tens of thousands of people who are not genuine asylum seekers, who are coming here and taking a liberty, and they're putting pressure, as the gentleman there rightly said, on the public services. They're living in hotels at a quality of life that many British people are not currently living in because of the cost of living crisis. And you put it all together and people wonder in government why you're seeing huge marches through the city of London. It's because people genuinely care about this stuff and they want somebody somewhere to sort it out.
Bonnie.
The question is, what can we learn from Donald Trump for this country? Nothing. Nothing. Donald Trump.
Okay, Bonnie, I'm just going to point out that I would say maybe half of you are applauding, but certainly half of you are not to that.
And if I can just carry on,
no, of course.
I said what you're saying, Piers, so I don't want to say that down.
Of course.
But the United States has become a much less civil society than it ever has been. You do not, in the United States of America, ever have somebody jump out of a truck with a mask on their face and take you down and take you to a prison and put you somewhere you don't even know where you are, and you cannot contact your family. You do not, in the United States, deport a person without due process because we are a nation of laws. This nation exists under the rule of law. The only way we can live as civilized human beings. Donald Trump has effectively destroyed that, hopefully not totally. He's taken people. If you come from Mexico and you're captured by ICE, I'm going to use the word capture, you can be taken to a jurisdiction that is friendly with Donald Trump's White House, and you can be deported to South Sudan. What the hell has that got to do with being Mexican, and that's why people aren't coming, because they're being sent into the twilight zone, and this is being allowed by the Congress of the United States, which has all of the powers that Donald Trump is using by executive order, and is being allowed by a majority conservative House Supreme Court, which is allowing this man to get away with dismantling one of the great democracies the world has ever seen.
Can I respond?
One more thing. We, unlike the United Kingdom, and I can talk about that later, the United States is a nation of immigrants. We have prided ourselves on being a nation of immigrants. Donald Trump's own mother was an immigrant. And so the irony, the sick, dangerous irony of this man is that the United States is now being asked to turn in on itself and destroy itself from its own base. And that's what he's doing.